Few artists in history produced more artworks than the Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh. Vincent managed to splash his troubled mind onto the canvas in a series of dramatic paintings. His career only lasted about a decade, but he completed over 860 oil paintings, the majority during the final years of his life. Despite this prolific streak, he only managed to sell one painting in his lifetime. Today, his mesmerizing paintings fascinate millions of people in museums all around the world. He's one of my favorite painters, and therefore I have compiled a list of 25 of his most notable works. Sit back, relax, and enjoy some of the most distinctive paintings ever created in art history. Number 1. Vincent van Gogh's Self-Portrait. The Dutch painter completed about 36 self-portraits during his decade-long career, which is about 3 to 4 a year. He did this to sharpen his technique when he didn't have enough money to pay for a model, which was about all the time. Many self-portraits he painted depict the right side of his face, which appears to be the left side in these works. That's because it's likely that he used a mirror and copied the view he got in it. One exception is his self-portrait with a bandaged ear, which depicts the side of his self-inflicted injury, but more about that episode in just a minute. Number 2. The Red Vineyard. I already mentioned that Vincent van Gogh only managed to sell one painting during his lifetime, and the Red Vineyard was it. It depicts the view of a beautiful vineyard near Arles, southern France, where the painter lived at the time. The flickering sun rays and red hue he used emphasized the rough conditions these workers had to work in. The painting was one of Vincent's works that was displayed at the exhibition of Les Aix in Brussels in January of 1890. It was Belgian painter Anna Boch who bought it, the sister of his close friend Eugène Boch, and it later became Russian state property in the early 20th century. Number 3. The Potato Eaters. He painted this dark and gloomy painting while he was living with his parents in Nuenen, North Brabant, in 1885. You can see the raw view of a family of poor peasants who are having supper by candlelight. Van Gogh knew the De Groot family, who lived together with another family in a shack in the same village. What's intriguing is that Vincent considered this to be the best painting he completed during the early phase of his career. He chose these people because they looked as if they literally dug up these potatoes with their bare hands. Number 4. The Portrait of Père Tanguy. This portrait depicts Julien Tanguy, a renowned paint grinder, art collector, and art gallery owner who Van Gogh knew very well. He completed 3 versions shortly after he arrived in Paris, and there's something special about these paintings. The first version features a rather dull color palette, which was typical for his early style. The second and third versions, however, show signs of the colorful swirling painting technique that defines his later work. It shows Vincent's interest in Japanese art, something that played a major role in the development of his own style. Number 5. The Yellow House. This painting shows the view of the house that Vincent van Gogh rented during his stay in Arles, southern France. It's here that he invited Paul Gauguin, his French colleague with whom he had a troubled relationship. As you'll soon discover, Vincent did whatever he could to decorate the guest room of this house to welcome Gauguin. You can see roadworks on the right and a pink house on the left. Vincent presumably ate here daily when he lived in the Yellow House. Unfortunately, this place was bombed during World War II, and the Yellow House was demolished shortly after. Number 6. Sunflowers. I just mentioned that Van Gogh wanted to make his Yellow House nice for Gauguin, and what better way to do this than with a series of sunflower paintings, right? Sunflowers is the title of 2 series of paintings by the Dutch painter, one of which was executed in Paris in 1887. The first series is significantly more gloomy as he painted the flowers while they were lying on the floor. The bright air and beautiful landscapes of southern France certainly inspired him in the second series though. Painted to decorate the Yellow House in 1888, these paintings of sunflowers are arguably some of Van Gogh's best known works. Number 7. Café Terrace at Night. This beautiful painting of a café in central Arles at night is another world-famous painting by Vincent van Gogh. It's one of 3 paintings that feature a distinctive starry night, and as you'll soon see, it's clear that Vincent was testing this type of night view. The foreground is dominated by the cobblestones of the Place du Forum, a picturesque square full of bars and restaurants. Van Gogh was a real fan of the night and once mentioned that the effect of colors amplifies after sunset. The café depicted in his painting, known as Café la Nuit today, features a plaque nearby where Vincent set up his easel to paint. Number 8. Starry Night over the Rhône. Did I say that Van Gogh adored the night? This becomes very clear in this mesmerizing view of a bright sky at night in southern France. Located just 2 minutes away from his yellow house, Vincent completed this painting on the banks of the Rhône river. Just look at how he painted the stars and the aquamarine sky using thick golden brushstrokes. The flickering light of the gas lamps near the water is also quite impressive, especially as it reflects on the nearby river. 2 small boats and 2 lovers in the foreground transform a starry night over the Rhône into one of Van Gogh's most stunning paintings. Number 9. The Starry Night. Speaking of mesmerizing paintings, the Starry Night is likely the most famous painting that Vincent ever completed. It depicts a similar starry night view, but this time from his bedroom window while he stayed at the mental hospital at Saint-Rémy-de-Provence. It was painted about a year later while he was recovering from a severe mental breakdown, which was likely triggered by the visit of Paul Gauguin in Arles. The dark cypress tree obscures the left side of the work, while the flickering moon is accompanied by Venus, something that Vincent probably didn't know at the time. The swirling brushstrokes became somewhat of the painter's trademark and could be interpreted as a metaphor for the mental chaos he experienced. Number 10. Bedroom in Arles. I think very few people in art history could transform the view of a simple bedroom into a stunning work of art. We already saw his yellow house, and this is his bedroom in this residence in Arles, on the first floor of the building. He wrote to his brother Theo that he wanted to paint as many colors as he possibly could in order to make the bedroom come to life. On the wall there are 2 portraits of his friends Eugène Boch and Paul-Eugène Millet, both painted the same year and known as the poet and the lover respectively. Vincent liked this work so much that he painted 3 different versions with only slight variations. Number 11. The Night Café. This painting appears to be another colorful painting depicting a popular establishment in Arles, but it's not what it seems to be. The longer you stare at the Night Café, the more you notice that it conveys a very depressing atmosphere. This type of bar was a place where homeless people and other outcasts of society could stay during the nighttime. They could drink all night long or disappear through the curtains in the background to find a place to sleep. Vincent deliberately used the contrasting red and green colors to paint what he described as a place where one can go mad, ruin oneself, or commit a crime. Number 12. The Sower. Vincent van Gogh had a lifelong interest in sowers, and that's mainly because of this 1850 painting by Jean-François Millet. Vincent wanted to paint a modern version of this rather dark and gloomy work, and it's fair to conclude that he succeeded. The foreground is dominated by the fields, and Van Gogh applied thick blue, violet and orange paint to depict the clods of earth. The sun brightly shines in the background and its rays extend all the way to the edges of the canvas. The ripe corn in the background was the painter's attempt to turn this painting into a metaphor for the cycle of nature. Number 13. View of Arles, flowering orchards. Vincent moved to Arles, a small town in southern France, because he was extremely tired of the crowded streets of Paris. He arrived there in February of 1888, and it must have felt like a breath of fresh air to the Dutch painter. At the beginning of the spring, he started painting a series now known as Flowering Orchards, which conveys his uplifted mood at the time. A year later, in the spring of 1889, he painted this beautiful view of Arles, which features the flowering trees he depicted a year earlier. This particular work was one of the paintings he submitted to the exhibition of Les Aix in Brussels a year later, so he certainly liked it very much. Number 14. Almond Blossoms. Vincent van Gogh suffered many mental breakdowns during his life, and every time he recovered, he started painting flowering trees. The Almond Blossoms series, which he painted in Arles in 1888 and Saint-Rémy-de-Provence in 1890, are examples of this. To Vincent, flowering trees represented hope and optimism, and he painted them as soon as his troubled mind was briefly set at ease. This series also shows the continuous influence of Japanese art on his extensive oeuvre, especially Japanese woodblock prints which he sometimes copied. Another interesting fact about this painting of Almond Blossoms is that he sent it to his brother Theo as a gift to celebrate his newborn son, which Theo named Vincent in honor of his older brother. Number 15. Road with Cypress and Star. This painting is perhaps less known than his world-famous Starry Night, but in my opinion, it's much more important. Vincent didn't think much of the Starry Night as he painted it from memory and even didn't send it to Theo to save money. This work, titled Road with Cypress and Star, defines his swirling mature style, which is almost hypnotic. It was the final painting he completed in Saint-Remy in May 1890 and is full of symbols related to Vincent's own troubled mind. The cypress tree is a symbol of death and it reaches to the stars above, which could be interpreted as an omen for the painter's tragic demise. Number 16. Harvest at La Crau, with Montmajour in the background. I included another beautiful landscape in this list because this particular subject matter played an important role in the artist's career. You can almost feel the blistering heat of this work when you look at it, a sentiment strengthened by the yellow colors he used. Vincent set up his easel right there under the burning sun and depicted peasants working on the land in these harsh conditions. In the foreground, you can see a reaper at work, which is why Van Gogh initially titled this work The Harvest. Perhaps more important about this painting is that Vincent considered this to be one of his best works, stating that this painting kills all the rest. Number 17. The Mulberry Tree. You already saw a number of paintings that feature the distinctive swirling brushstrokes of Van Gogh's work, but in my opinion, nothing beats this one. Titled The Mulberry Tree, it's the epitome of Vincent's enthralling impasto technique, which featured thick, visible brushstrokes. Just look at how he managed to almost transform this two-dimensional canvas into a three-dimensional work of art. This work was painted in the autumn of 1889 while he was staying in the mental asylum of Saint-Remy. He referred to this painting as his best work of autumn, and it's pretty easy to understand why. Number 18. Portrait of Dr. Gachet. Following his extended stay at the mental hospital in southern France, Van Gogh settled in Auvers-sur-Oise, just northwest of Paris. Unable to get himself out of the endless cycle of mental instability, Vincent tried to seek help from this man. Dr. Paul Gachet was not only a French doctor best known for treating Vincent, but also a fan of the Impressionist movement. Unfortunately, the few months he spent together with Vincent didn't help at all as he only went deeper into the abyss. Vincent completed 2 portraits of Paul Gachet, and the first version was sold for $82.5 million to a Japanese businessman in 1990, a record-breaking sale at the time. Number 19. The Church at Auvers. After Vincent arrived in Auvers-sur-Oise, he instantly started setting up his easel in what was then a small rural town near Paris. That's the only thing that really helped the Dutch artist to conquer the demons he felt inside, so he simply started another series of paintings. What's remarkable about this painting and the others he completed during the final months of his life is that it conveys a sense of nostalgia. It's clear that Van Gogh was missing the time he lived in Rhône, so these paintings are sometimes referred to as a reminiscence of the North. What's striking about this painting is that the foreground is brightly lit by sunshine, but the church is cast in a shadow. Number 20. Houses at Auvers. This painting, along with several other similar works, highlights the nostalgia he felt when he arrived in Auvers-sur-Oise. It depicts a farmhouse in the hamlet of Chaponval, and there's something special about it. As you can see, it looks fairly similar to the one depicted in the painting titled The Cottage, which he completed in Rhône in 1885. You can just feel how Vincent must have felt when he moved from southern to northern France, and apart from his beautiful paintings, nothing good would come out of it. He completed this painting at the beginning of June 1890, just a few months before he passed away. Number 21. Irises. Vincent van Gogh painted a large number of flowers and still lifes during his career, and I personally find this the best work of all. Irises was painted in May 1889, shortly after he arrived at the mental asylum of Saint Paul in Saint-Remy. Vincent had plenty of time to explore the area, and luckily, the asylum had a flower garden where he could find inspiration. He spent a significant amount of time there, so it's one of dozens of paintings depicting the compound of the hospital. It's another very expensive painting as it was sold to the Getty Museum in Los Angeles for $35.2 million way back in 1990. Number 22. Wheatfield with Cypresses. Once Vincent was allowed to get out of the closed compound of the mental hospital, he set up his easel in the beautiful French landscape. He was especially fascinated with wheat fields and cypress trees, as you can see in this mesmerizing painting. The background features the small and low Alpilles mountain range in the Provence region of southern France. It's one of 3 versions he made of this exact view, and what I particularly like about these are the swirling clouds and the azure blue sky. The first painting was bought for $57 million in 1993 and donated to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City shortly after. Number 23. Sorrowing Old Man. Also known as At Eternity's Gate, this is a depressing portrait of an old man who holds his head in his hands. It was painted in the first half of the year 1890, following another severe mental breakdown. He already made a lithograph of this old war veteran and brought the subject back up because of this. About 6 months later, tragedy would strike the worn-out Dutch painter. Number 24. Tree Roots. This colorful painting depicts what appears to be tree roots and trunks at the edge of a forest. Up close, however, you can't really make much of the thick brushstrokes and it almost appears to be an abstract work of art. It's one of several double-squared canvases that Vincent painted during the final weeks of his life, and arguably one of the most beautiful ones. What's also fascinating is that the location where Van Gogh set up his easel has likely been discovered as well. Equally intriguing is the notion that this might just have been the final painting he completed in his lifetime. Number 25. Wheatfield with Crows. The final work in this list of famous Vincent van Gogh paintings is titled Wheatfield with Crows. It's also a contender for being his latest work, although he painted tree roots likely just a little bit later. The black crows, often considered to be a symbol of death, and the road that leads to nowhere might have suggested what was to come. Vincent van Gogh shot himself in the chest with a gun in a field just like this near Auvers, and he later succumbed to his injuries. As you saw in this list, this stunning painting is one of the numerous distinctive masterpieces painted by the troubled Dutch artist.